I tell everybody this all the time too. If you can go with somebody who's a specialist in whatever you're doing, do it, man. You know what I mean? Like we specialize in BMWs, particularly in that 3 Series, and we do a lot of 5 Series too. Um, but there's just nothing that we haven't encountered yet because we just do this one thing so much, and we do a lot of 350Z and FRSBRZ too. FRSBRZ guys, they love us too, man, and it's crazy. I don't have that car. I've never had that car, but we cater to them and we believe we just listen to them. You know, we just do it, and it's been fantastic. I love those guys. But if you can go to a specialist, man, you know, like if you're gonna get your car tuned, go to some dude that's had that tunes that motor and your standalone. You know, if you're gonna get suspension for your E36, go with somebody who does specializes in E36 stuff. You know, if you have a Ford Focus RS, you know, just go for that, man. You know, find somebody who lives and breathes that chassis, and you're gonna be happier, man. You're gonna pay a little bit more, but you're gonna fuss way less, and you're gonna talk to somebody who wants to talk to you, man. Like you, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people can vouch for this that people come in with the weirdest things on their car, and I'm just like, oh, you mean that tiny little 18 millimeter bolt? Yeah, yeah, loosen that back up. And sometimes it has nothing to do with their suspension, but I know the car so in and out that I think it's worth all the money in the world, man. I'll never go to somebody, nobody generic ever in my life, ever again.
Yeah, and you usually pay for what you get for it. And it's kind of weird because some people will research on building a motor to the nth degree, but
Hmm.
not think about like, oh, this coilover is gonna be the just buy an off the shelf one and call it
Oh
good.
man,
And
oh
it's
dude,
just it's so weird that people just don't really realize what a good like suspension component can do set up for your exact thing. And I know with like a
100,
lot of motorsports, it's
especially
especially
drag
with like
racing.
drag racing and drifting and stuff like that where you're using the full motion of the car or you're
Right.
using these and even with the low cars, I mean, it's a lot of the times it helps to go with the right thing.
For sure, man. And I can't count how many guys uh, who have these, you know, Mark IV Supra that'll have like, you know, 14, 15, 1600 horsepower, and they're on like OE replacement conies. You know what I mean? With like
Yeah.
low ring springs, and you know their motor costs like 50, $60,000 to build, and you know their suspension's like 600, $700. And listen, I'm not telling you to go out and spend as much money as you can on your suspension because that's also not the solution. But you got to do some research, and unfortunately, for good stuff, you have to spend a couple of bucks, man. Especially with suspension, M- not all the time you're gonna get what you pay for, and that's a complicated subject, man. And I was actually talking to Chaz about this that periodically, I mean, we benchmark a lot of other shocks, right? We want to make sure that we're really doing that we're putting our money where our mouth is, right? Like when I say I'm the
Yeah.
best, I don't want to just say that. I want to be able to, where somebody goes, no, you're not, have at least some sort of data to back that up. And I mean, sometimes we do dyno shocks that are, you know, $3,000, $4,000, and they perform. I don't want to say worse, but they'll have certain characteristics that are less desirable than our 500 series, which is, you know, 14, 24.99. Um, so
How often do you shock dyno your products
every shot.
from every shock is
Yeah,
shock dyno. And that's kind of a rarity thing
it
versus
is.
some of the other companies because they just kind of slap them together and call it good. And they have a set
Like a
uh,
formula, right? Like a recipe.
formula. Yeah, yeah. Because all it is what little washers that allow fluid to flow through.
Right, right. So it'll be a piston,
Yeah,
and on either side of that piston, we put shims, right? So there'll be certain thicknesses, certain diameters, and they exert certain forces, which allow us to fine tune that ride. So and we use a digressive piston, which is it's, it's higher end stuff. A lot of people use a linear piston, um, which is also, I mean, it's a can of worms. But like those linear shock pistons, they don't have a lot of low end force. And what I mean by low end force is like when you're like braking, like if you're going like 80 miles an hour when you brake, you notice that your front end kind of dips forward a little bit and things
And
like
then
that.
the harder you hit it, the farther it'll go down,
Right, yeah,
and
you'll feel
it'll
your
be a
nose kick in.
linear force versus
Right. So
progressive.
right. So when you do hit that, you'll hit your brakes, you'll notice your car kind of dips in that way. That means you don't have a lot of force at low speed shaft speeds, right? So we have a lot of force right there. So like when you're actually braking, we have a lot of force. So you don't feel your car dip. So if you're coming off a hard sweeping turn at 80 miles an hour, our car is going to roll less because we essentially have almost the same amount of force throughout the entire range um, of the shock of the shaft speed, whereas a lot of companies it's linear. So that means that when you hit a bump on the highway, yeah, they'll feel stiff. But if you're just kind of in a parking lot, just turning your wheel, that's how you're gonna feel yourself. You just do a lot of this.
Do a lot of the rolling, and then
Right.
um,
And
a
shout
lot
out
of
to Fortunato because they're the ones who let us really just like run through all of their stuff and just pick stuff off the shelf and figure out what works, man. So we wouldn't be here
yeah,
without them. So shout out to Fortunato and Terry from Fortunato.
yeah, and that's one thing that I kind of really liked about like when I got it. I knew it was when I got it. I had a certificate that it was shock
Oh
dynoed
yeah.
and it was done by somebody versus
Start to finish too, yeah.
some of the other products that are out there where you just get it and it's just in a box and that's all you get.
Yeah.
I just feel like a lot of people that go out there is they'll get coilovers and they'll either put it their dampening to completely loose or completely hard, which
Right.
no, I mean, obviously if you make a simple product, you want it to be almost as least adjustable as possible
Right.
and less of a headache for somebody else. I mean, a lot of the people that need to adjust either dampening or rebound or compression are going to be doing racing, and hopefully they have an understanding for that.
Right.
But
Hopefully.
yeah, it shocks are kind of like a mystery sometimes when it comes to setting that up, and if you don't know proper setup, it's kind of a hard thing to figure out.
It is. And the thing about it is that it's also kind of boring, right? Like I understand, like I'm in the shop business, right? But I understand that it's not sexy, right? Like it's not like wheels, right? It's not like a body
No,
kit, so it's
it's
not
some
sexy. And like
it's not
if
something you're
you're
gonna see, and it's not.
right, right, and like if you're linking turns, or on your course already, like a lot of people are kind of just satisfied with that, right? They're just like, yo, look, dog, I can link the whole course. My wheels fit right, like my car is dialed. But sometimes like I'll jump in the car and I'll be fucking horrified by it. You know what I mean? Like, oh
Yeah,
my God, I can't believe this. But so it's just not sexy. So a lot of people don't want to hear about this kind of stuff. And I mean, I don't think people really I don't think most people know what like good suspension is really supposed to feel like. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
oh
it's
yeah,
like it's like a good wine. Like unless you had it, you're not gonna know what it is.
yeah, and like when I first started, like I got my first set of coilovers, I put them on. I was like, oh, these are good. And
Amazing.
then I rode with one of my buddies on his car, and I was like, wow, these are like 10 times better than what mine were.
Right.
And then when I recently had yours, and I put them on my car, and I started doing spirited driving with them, I was like, this is what I wanted because I was more educated and knew what I wanted. And
Right.
there's companies out there that do certain things that are designed for certain cars,
Right.
um, and they work really good. Which the one I'm talking about was it's a company that's local to the Midwest that makes coilovers that made specifically for the 240s with an LS swap in it, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
definitely it rode really well, and
Mm-hmm.
you could tell it was tailored for that. specific setup.
Right, right. And also,
And
I think those guys you're talking about, man, I haven't seen them around in a while. I hope they're still doing pretty good, man. They also did their shots the same way that we did, like very romantically. They built some. I don't know if they did it the same way we did, but at least that was the impression that they gave us. I mean, I'm also part of the general public, but I applaud them for at least doing it the right way.